Although in most African countries, governments are made up of teams that, with varying degrees of democratic openness, can be considered modern structures, the overall image often resembles that of any 21st century nation. In capitals and major cities, men and women from different social classes move side by side among administrative buildings, residential neighborhoods, shopping centers, and historic districts adapted to contemporary life. Politics, bureaucracy, and urban life operate according to familiar logics, with ministries, security forces, and legal systems that, at least on the surface, answer to a centralized state. That image, however, begins to fade the farther one moves from urban centers. Across vast rural regions, within national parks, deserts, jungles, or hard-to-reach mountain areas, the presence of the state becomes minimal or disappears altogether. Geographic obstacles, compounded in many cases by political conflicts, poorly defined borders, or long-standing ethnic tensions, have allowed truly autonomous enclaves to take root in some countries. Governed by ancestral tribes or by armed groups of various kinds, these territories function as states within a state with their own rules, internal hierarchies, and effective control of the land. Over the decades, the existence of these entities has posed a persistent challenge to the security, territorial integrity, and social cohesion of the countries that officially encompass them. In northern Kenya, a region shaped by arid landscapes, near empty expanses, and a strong presence of traditional communities, lies the Marsabit National Reserve, a vast protected area near Lake Turkana. Known both for its natural wealth and its extreme isolation, this zone has historically been a blind spot for central administration. It is home to a tribe whose relationship with the Kenyan state has been particularly delicate for decades. The government maintains a respectful and carefully calibrated distance, largely due to the enduring presence of figures known locally as the Kings of the Pale Masks, ritual and political leaders whose influence extends beyond the tribe itself into neighboring territories. According to fragmentary records and indirect testimonies, these kings do not rule through structures visible to an outside observer, but rather through symbols, ceremonies, and an authority that blends tradition, religion, and social control. Their mere presence has been enough to deter military incursions, in-depth official investigations, or attempts at forced integration. For the state, direct intervention in the area has always entailed a political and human risk that is difficult to justify. In 1995, this situation led to a singular episode. A group of French documentary filmmakers managed to obtain special permission to enter northern Kenya for an extremely limited period of time. The authorization was granted largely due to the persistence of a Franco-Kenyan journalist named Etienne Mbala, who claimed to have family roots tied to that tribe. Mbala had grown up in Europe, but maintained that his maternal lineage came directly from the Marsabit region, and that, according to stories passed down in his family, there was a distant connection to the line of the masked kings. Beyond his personal search, Etienne had a clear objective: to demonstrate to public opinion that this isolated tribe posed no threat to the rest of the country or to the outside world. He believed that silence, rumors, and the lack of reliable information had created an exaggeratedly dangerous image of the community, fueled by ignorance and fear of the unfamiliar. Convinced that a controlled approach could change that perception, he used his position as a journalist to push the expedition forward. The media team arrived in Kenya with a permit valid for only 3 days, a deadline imposed both by the authorities and by the security conditions of the region itself. During that time, they would be allowed to live alongside different tribes in the north, always under strict rules of conduct and without any freedom of movement. The culmination of the trip would be a meeting with the so-called kings, who, they were told, had agreed to receive the group as a gesture of courtesy toward Etienne Mbala, whom they recognized, at least symbolically, as a bearer of royal blood. When the team finally managed to reach the territory controlled by the kings, the first thing that became evident was that this was not an individual form of leadership, but a complete family structure. Men and women of different ages shared the same rank and authority, functioning as a kind of ruling lineage in which no single figure stood above the others. To the visitors, it felt more like a closed court than a traditional tribal chieftainship. This family exercised absolute control over the area, and its authority was recognized and accepted without question by the rest of the community. The most striking feature was their appearance. Every member of this family wore carefully crafted white masks or, in some cases, kept their faces entirely covered with pigments of the same color. This was not an occasional ornament, but a constant trait present in everyday activities as well as in formal ceremonies. According to the tribe's own explanations, this white veil served an essential purpose. It acted as a channel of communication between their earthly existence and the divine forces they claimed to serve. For them, white did not conceal. It enabled passage between the two realms, granting legitimacy and power. At first, the team interpreted these explanations as part of the community's symbolic and religious system. The masks seemed to fulfill a ritual role similar to that found in many traditional cultures, reinforcing the leader's authority and their connection to the sacred. However, that reading began to fracture during a ritual session the documentary crew was allowed to attend, under the strict condition that they neither intervene nor question what they witnessed. During this ritual, the kings began to demonstrate what the tribe described as their gifts. In front of the cameras and under the expectant gaze of dozens of onlookers, they selected men in what appeared to be a random manner and subjected them to trials that completely defied the understanding of external observers. Some of those chosen displayed a mix of pride and astonishment, while others reacted with unmistakable fear when drawn into something they could not control. Bodies were lifted into the air in an inexplicable way, remaining suspended for long seconds, as if they had lost all weight. For the kings, these acts seemed to be part of a ritual spectacle, a display of authority and power before their people. The men who were lifted were not treated as individuals, but as components of the ceremony, temporary figures within an act that blended devotion, control, and warning. The fate of some of them remained uncertain, and it was not always clear what happened at the end of each demonstration, only that not all of them returned. The reaction of the media team was immediate. Any intention of documenting, analyzing, or contextualizing what they were witnessing dissolved in the face of a sense of real and imminent danger. The original idea of recording a misunderstood culture gave way to the urgent need to leave the area as quickly as possible. For them, it was no longer a complex cultural phenomenon, but a situation that allowed no room for mistakes or second chances. After their return, the footage was never released in full. Instead, fragmentary accounts, incomplete testimonies, and rumors began to circulate on forums and early internet sites, where the story gradually took on the shape of a myth. People debated what other abilities these kings might possess, how much of what had occurred was real, and how much could be attributed to some form of carefully staged deception. At the same time, the most unsettling question lingered: whether, in those remote lands, far from any state control, the supernatural truly operated beyond the laws that govern the rest of the world.